You're listening to TG1F, an F1 podcast with Kate and Nicole.
We're your hosts. I'm Kate.
And I'm Nicole.
And this is our show, where we talk about all things Formula One.
And a lot of things that are not Formula One, too.
Because why the heck not?
This is your formal invitation to a weekly hangout with your F1 BFFs, where we'll talk on-track action, off-track gossip, and throw in some hot pop culture topics.
It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned F1 fan, a curious newbie, or literally just think the drivers are hot. Because they are. There's a little something in this podcast for everyone.
Speaking of which, did you hear what happened this week?
No, tell me about it.
It's lights out and away we go, baby.
I have to give a shout out quickly to whoever it was that commented on our reel from last week and said Kate is glowing today. I just have to tell you that meant so much to me. And then immediately I did get a pimple. So, you may have been a curse on me, but
well, let's get into it. I gotta get back to my book. I am eating just a little side note. Everyone, little recommendation from your girl. I am reading a Kindle Unlimited book called Spark of the Everflame, and I am gobbling this shit up. Like I'm on the third book right now, and I truly can't believe it's a Kindle Unlimited book. I'm like, this book is so good. The story is really fun. It's like got really good writing. I am like constantly like on my toes, but like in a good way. Like not that it's like a plot.
You're not guessing things? You're not like
no.
Oh, see, that's tough for you because you're always guessing. Like you're always guessing things correctly. Like I feel like nothing surprises you about any of the books that we read. You're always like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. And I'm like, you're literally so smart. How do you know?
I am just like, she's really crushing it. Highly recommend if you're looking for a fun little book to read this summer. I highly recommend it.
All right, let's get into it then so you can get back to your book. We have the Barcelona preview. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Barcelona.
Let's get the load out on Lona. We are entering the first of the triple header for Europe. So we've got Barcelona this weekend, Austria the following weekend, and then Silverstone. And then we have 1 week off and then 2 more races until summer break. So only 5 more races until summer break. Can't believe it.
Stacking them in. We're stacking them in right now. It's the European leg of the tour right now.
Things go quickly in Europe. It's just kind of like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. They only have to travel too far between races. They're like, oh, it's actually 15 minutes that way.
Exactly. But I think the biggest thing this weekend that we know coming up is Perez has been handed a 3-place penalty grid due to his behavior on track last race in Montreal. And by behavior, I mean he hobbled to the pits with a broken car instead of pulling off.
He did the Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
Hobbling.
Exactly.
This is my impression of a car without a wheel hobbling.
I'm trying to make it round, but I have elbows.
I was like, I have to explain what I just did because if anyone's watching on YouTube, that looked insane.
I know what you were doing. You're a car without a wheel. Like, I got it.
Ew.
If we
this
were
is the full wheel. This is the broken one, and I'm hobbling.
Exactly. He said, if Lightning McQueen can do it, so can I.
So can I.
For it. But, I think one of the biggest things that people are kind of talking about is how Red Bull is going to perform here. Does Perez have a shot at a podium this week, despite his 3-place penalty grid? And so Barcelona is known for F1 testing, right? So according to the media, Red Bull is expected to be highly competitive at Barcelona. So Miami, Monaco, and Montreal each had elements that were more troubling for Red Bull, and therefore was not a huge surprise to see them challenged at those circuits. So the Red Bull run may be back. Their reign of terror may be continuing through the European leg. We shall see. It's been nice. Max did obviously win in Montreal, but he had a good run for his money.
I'm intrigued. I feel like this season is actually kind of kicking up a notch where I'm like, oh, we're seeing more competition than we thought. And I, for one, am very excited about it.
We'll see.
That. We all liked that. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, how long is this going to last? Like, how long is it going to be before we were like, that was, as the commenters last week again said, an absolutely superb cameo by the other teams. Red Bull's back. So we'll see. But I think if the past few races are any indication of where those teams are at, then I think that we could continue to see some fun races for the rest of the season, and I can't wait.
Yeah. So the top 4 teams are expected to bring new parts to Barcelona, which is seen as an ideal track to test upgrades given its traditional nature. Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren are all bringing new upgrades. And in terms of upgrades, Toto, we saw at Mercedes last week or at Montreal that Mercedes did have some juice to their cars. Their upgrades were proven to be fruitful, as George was on the podium and narrowly kind of missed out on a win there. But Toto said the truth is that over the last 3 races, we've brought so many new parts, visible and invisible to the eye, that have contributed milliseconds to more performance. I think we're only going to see the Mercedes car punch it up a little bit more at Barcelona. So I'm excited to see what upgrades people are bringing. And I think, if I'm correct, on Friday, we'll have an understanding of which upgrades everyone is bringing.
I'm excited. I'm nervous, but I'm excited.
Things could go well and things could go wrong.
I'm like, I really hope these upgrades are actually upgrades and not downgrades. And I'm looking at you, Ferrari. Like, I'm always nervous when they change anything. I'm like, things are going kind of good. So, like, careful. I mean, they weren't good last weekend, but
double D enough.
Yeah.
Well, after a pointless weekend in Canada, Ferrari are 59 points back from the leaders, with McLaren a further 40 points. And so these are significant yet recoverable margins. And mostly if Perez continues to be a weak link for Red Bull. Ferrari and McLaren, if Ferrari and McLaren are able to rely on each of their drivers for consistent performance. So they're down but not out, especially if Perez can't get his shit together for a 3rd race in a row. So I guess,
bro, you just got an extended contract. Like, show us why.
Show us why.
He's literally like, oh, check. All right, I don't care anymore. Like,
right? Like he proved everyone wrong and then immediately proved everyone right.
He's like, I got that signed on the dotted line.
I don't care. The ink has dried, bitch. And the last thing I have here on the Barcelona preview is that I really think things are going to be spicy at Alpine this upcoming race. We didn't cover this.
There's so much stuff happening at Alpine right now. Like, there's just so much.
We didn't cover this in the Canadian pre-cap, but after losing a position to Danny due to an energy management issue, Ocon was unhappy at being asked to move over for teammate Gasly, but eventually did so with a little over a lap remaining. Gasly couldn't get to Danny in that time, but Alpine didn't swap the positions back. So Ocon had a little bit of a meltdown, saying that he had been, quote, too nice and always followed instructions, but Alpine countered that and that it took too long for Ocon to follow the order, and that cost Gasly his best chance at beating Danny. And the presence of Nico close behind Ocon was also given as a reason not to switch the drivers again at the end of the race.
Yeah.
So I envision...
Well, did you hear the drama from today? I mean, it might not have been today, but I just saw it. That Renault is apparently considering not supplying Alpine engines anymore.
Oh, that's crazy. No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So Alpine is kind of heading towards rock bottom, I feel.
They just got all those celebrity investors, though. What do you mean?
I know. Trav, you got to step in here. I saw that and I was like, damn. Or a team that used to be called Renault to now not, like, Renault wants absolutely no part of it. That's kind of crazy.
They're like, you're selling our good name.
Literally.
Our engines look like shit and we simply won't allow that.
And that's the preview. There's a preview of things to come this weekend. So stay tuned. See what happens. And now it's time for the 2 Girls O'Clock news. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of the 2 Girls O'Clock news. We are live recorded on Monday. And today's top stories. First, we're going to break down some more silly season drama. Nicole's live on the scene. So it seems, Nicole, that we are getting closer and closer to a confirmation of Carlos Sainz being headed to Williams. Do you have more information on this?
I sure do. Thanks, Kate. Carlos Sainz has allegedly reported that he is going to sign a 4-year Williams contract, but with a crucial break clause. So, respected journalist Michael Schmidt has shed light on the negotiations between Carlos Sainz and Williams, claiming the team have offered the outgoing Ferrari star a 4-year contract. However, any deal is likely to contain a break clause, affording Sainz to walk away at the end of the 2026 season if Williams has not progressed as they hoped. So,
Interesting.
Williams and Audi are believed to be Sainz's remaining 2 options in 2025, with Schmidt claiming the 29-year-old is most likely to join Williams as things stand. Everyone's kind of like, I mean, all of the doors are really closing on Carlos, so it's really his likely only option. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing.
Nope. We've discussed at length our thoughts on Carlos and Williams. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's going to be very interesting, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, again, like we said, I don't see a world in which he doesn't take a Williams contract over sitting out for a year. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So,
Correct. Yeah. And even if he has to be there for 2 years, collect that paycheck, keep it going, and then
right.
like show how good you are, and then keep it moving if you have to.
Yeah. Do you think if like Lewis retired after 1 year with Ferrari, that Ferrari would hire Carlos back? Do you think he'd want to go back?
I don't know.
Questions, thinking things,
Questions.
thinking thoughts.
I don't know. I feel like maybe, but also it's kind of that like, do you go back to someone that's burned you?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, but we've seen him play out before many a time. So that's why I'm saying like maybe they don't care.
No.
So we shall see.
I don't know. I guess it depends on how his season is going, how many other options he has, and what kind of deal Ferrari gives to him, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like this next thing that we're going to talk about for silly season, we got to start having like a subsection called like M&M, a Marco minute, because every fucking week we're talking about something that the Grim Reaper has said.
But I feel like he's been kind of on a positive trajectory of saying things lately.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's happening. I feel like he really did get visited by some ghosts, and they were like
the ghosts of Grand Prix past. So
like he has to have, because it's just such a switch. It's like he's a Grinch and his heart has grown 3 sizes overnight. Like, I don't know what's going on.
like,
I don't necessarily know if I trust it.
The man was number 1 Yuki Tsunoda hater, number 1 Yuki Tsunoda op, and here he is week after week saying good things. You know what it is? He heard our call for vengeance and he said, I'm not fucking with the 2 girls.
Amen. Also, I'm like, does Yuki have something on him? Like, what does Yuki have?
We love to theorize that drivers at Red Bull have dirt on people in authority.
Like, it's like they have to at this point. Like, there's no other explanation.
Yeah. Anyway, Helmut Marko revealed that Yuki was in, quote, high demand for rival F1 teams.
I'm not surprised.
Sure as heck was. Yuki has really proven himself to be an asset at VCARB. Last week we talked about how he had re-signed his contract and it really seemed like a no-brainer. But I am so curious to hear about what the other contracts look like for Yuki and who was courting him and kind of what sweet deal they dangled in front of Yuki to get him to stay at VCARB. Because I know. This is going to be his 5th season with the team. Like, I feel like that's like a pretty long time to stay with the team in Formula One. And last week, I know we talked about Helmut Marko saying Yuki thought that he had been promoted to Red Bull. Maybe we see a Yuki Red Bull partnership down the line because they're like, Yuki, you keep this up, like, you're a shoo-in.
Yeah. I am so intrigued, and I really hope so. But I'm happy to see this upswing in confidence towards our mans, because he deserves it. And I was getting sick and tired of people discounting him. So I'm excited to see that the ghosts of Grand Prix past have been doing their job and they've turned things around.
Yeah.
Thank God. This next news story we have is almost too much for my wee heart to handle. It just combines two of my favorite things.
It does. It really
Two of
does.
my most favorite things in the world. Charles Leclerc and the Olympics. So Charles Leclerc has been selected to be the very first Olympic torchbearer for Monaco.
Mhm.
Oh, oh, I can't.
The prince,
It's everything I could have ever asked.
I know. Yeah, so he is going to proudly carry the torch through the streets of Monaco. By the time this has come out, it will have already happened, so you will have already heard all our thoughts and feelings on it. But this is still coming up. So after receiving the torch, Leclerc will hand it off to skier Alexandra Coletti, and the torch will subsequently make its way through a sequence of Monegasque athletes, including table tennis player Xiaoxin Yang and bobsled competitor Rudy Rinaldi, eventually reaching the hands of Prince Albert II and Princess Charlene. So, pretty serious business for Charles Leclerc.
This is literally huge for me because, like, we've talked about this before on the podcast, I guess 2.5 years ago when we first started the last one, the Olympics. We love
You
the
do.
Olympics. Like, I just love the Olympics so much. I think it's one of the most fun things we do in the world, and I just love it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what about it is that like just makes me so excited, but I love the Olympics, and I specifically love the Summer Olympics. I love the Summer Olympics. Love gymnastics, love to watch it. I love diving.
Mhm.
I love synchronized diving because that shit is so crazy. I love to watch swimming,
Mhm.
and I love synchronized swimming. I think it's so fun. One of my favorite things to watch, literally ever. Um,
Well, you gotta get into the equestrian stuff now too, since you're into hobby horsing.
oh my gosh, I wish hobby horsing was an Olympic sport. Yeah, guys, I don't know what's happened. It's because I'm in my horse girl era right now, and I like really want to be a horse girl, horsewoman. Like I just want to ride a horse really bad, and so I've been just very on my like equestrian bullshit. Um, and for some reason, my algorithm has decided that I'm not good enough for real horses, and I need to be getting hobby horse content. It's my entire Discover page. Only I literally am getting exclusively hobby horsing content. I keep seeing this one that's this girl. She's on the ground hyperventilating. This girl is like beet red, can't breathe, is dripping sweat, and it's like this is me after my hobby horsing competition at everyone who doesn't think hobby horsing is a real sport. And I'm
Okay,
like,
but did you see the comments? Because she was getting eaten alive in the comments because people are like, "This is so insensitive." Some girl had just recently died. Like she fell off her horse during like an actual equestrian thing and she died. So people were like, "This is so insensitive. Like you're saying this is hard. Like a girl literally died on a real horse and you're pretending like this is like a real fucking sport. Like get bent." It was so funny. I was like, this is drama. This is what I
no,
went
like
to the internet for.
no, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with these. I keep getting like me in 2020 as me hobby horsing in 2020 versus me hobby horsing now, and like seeing the progression and like how much better they are at pretending they're on a horse. It's incredible. But my favorite part is the comments, and I'm just like, this is unbelievable. My favorite video I did see was like someone in defense of hobby horsing, and it was like, we get a lot of hate in the hobby horsing community, but what people don't see is what I really get out of hobby horsing, which is a great workout, great friends, traveling to like cool places and all this stuff. And I was like, honestly, guys, whatever makes you happy. This is like, I just had no idea it was such like I feel as though I'm a fly on the wall of the hobby horsing community now because I am like ingrained in their content. I'm just always on it and it's so serious.
Two
They
girls,
have like
one hobby
legitimate
horse.
panels of judges.
We're gonna start judging.
Two girls are hobby horsing. Yeah, so I'm on the committee for make hobby horsing an Olympic sport. Like I'm here, I'm ready to go. We'll see. But yeah, I will be watching the equestrian competitions this year in an attempt to continue my horse girl era.
Love it.
So yeah.
Love
I love the Olympics and I can't wait. What's your favorite thing to watch?
I love tennis. I love beach
Yeah.
volleyball, all the classics, but I also do really love diving.
I really love men's gymnastics
Mhm.
because the shit that they do is insane. Did you see people? I'm making another horse reference. There's like this video going around of female gymnasts doing the hobble horse.
Mm-mm.
You know that thing? It's like they
Yeah.
hold on to the middle and they swing their legs around. And so there's like a bunch of these like male gymnasts going and they're like crushing it. And then the girls go up and try it and they don't even get like halfway around. They're like, what muscles do you use for this? Like literally what sorcery is this? Like one girl gets like fully around once and then can't do it. And I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That is insane. So yeah, I love it. I think synchronized diving might be my favorite though because I just feel like it's so crazy. How do you First of all, I don't understand diving in general. Like I'm just like how do you decide to make your body move like that in midair? Like I don't think like I'm just like there's what is it? Like do you use gravity? Like what is like how do you use your muscles to do that? I'm never going to try it. So I'm never going to like figure it out because I'm too scared of the consequences. But like, I don't understand it. And then to do that at the exact same time as someone else, I can't.
Insane.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Insane.
Similarly to airplanes and snakes. Another thing I don't understand.
Not Kate's business.
Synchronized diving. Not my business. Respectfully watching from a distance.
Also, things that we love. Maybe. The FIA has adjusted.
Things that we potentially are in love with, unsure.
So the FIA, there's been a lot of talk about this. The FIA has finally adjusted the minimum age for super license and paves the way for an early Kimi Antonelli debut. So I know there's been a lot of talk about this. Kimi's birthday is in August. He's currently only 17, which is really interesting. So the minimum age at which a driver can compete in F1 has been lowered from 18 to 17, opening the door for Mercedes junior driver Kimi Antonelli to make his F1 debut before his 18th birthday on August 25th. The FIA also removed a requirement for drivers to hold road car license, which Antonelli is ineligible for in his native Italy until he turns 18, which they must have added that rule recently because if y'all remember, Danny Kvyat famously
didn't
did
have a license.
not have his license.
That's probably why. I wonder if he was the reason why. Because I mean, it makes sense because Max is the reason they put the age requirement in.
Yeah.
So,
So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? There's one thing. If there's one thing about the FIA, it's they're committed to playing by their own rules and just being like, you know what, we don't actually like this rule that we made up. We're gonna change it. But all the other ones, those are rules still. Like they're just. It's like when you play a board game with someone. And they're the only ones that have access to the rule book. And so you don't know how you're supposed to play. And they're just making shit up as they go.
I lost the rule book, but don't worry. I've played so many times. It's all up here.
Yeah. And they're just like, actually, this isn't going well for me. So I'm going to change the rules. And it's actually this. And you're like, what? It doesn't make any sense. And they're like, that's the rules. Sorry. And that's like the most, first of all, that's one of my least favorite things ever is when people just like change the rules in the middle of like playing a game. And I'm like, I just got the hang of this. Just give me the rule book. I just want to see it. So that's how I feel about the FIA. Yeah. And I feel like there's so many drivers right now that are probably so pissed.
Yeah. Well, it's also very unlikely because it's like, why did they actually change this?
Yeah.
Because Mercedes isn't going to replace Lewis or George before the end of the
Right.
season. So what? He has 2 months until he turns 18. Like, what was really the point of this?
Right. Like, do they just need to get him into a free practice session before then? Like, do they, like, is he unable to do a practice session like after that? I don't know. It's
So
suspicious.
the
It's a little
likely
sus.
outcome of this is an appearance in free practice, as all F1 teams are obliged to allocate at least 2 practice sessions per season to drivers with less than 2 Grand Prix experiences. So I guess because he is under the age, then they had to push for it because he has to be able to have this. I don't know. But it's curious. I think it's fueling a lot of rumors as well.
Curious.
Very curious.
Okay, Ollivander.
Well, I was like, it's very curious that Pierre had posted that photo with Mick. All the meanwhile, we've been kind of speculating that maybe Mick is going to Alpine. Who's to say?
And
Just
especially that's especially a slap in the face to Esty because Esty and Mick are supposed to be best friends.
I know. So what's kind of the
So
tea
he's
there?
like,
Is their friendship going to be over? Are they ever going to go to Disney World together after that? Like, what's going on?
who literally knows? Kind of crazy. They both have girlfriends again, and we haven't seen them go on a double date or a double vacation. So I'd
Hmm.
like to know what's going on.
Would love to know what's going on there.
Would love the tea. And that's been the 2 o'clock news. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with your breaking news stories.
Now we're going to get into a little interview.
For our segment, it's electric.
So we're interviewing Beth Paretta. She is the VP of Sporting for Formula E. I'm really excited to get to talk to her as part of our Formula E series. She's super cool. She is on a million boards and has done some amazing things in her career. So I'm really excited to chat with her, learn a little bit more about Formula E, and also just hear about how she's supporting women in motorsports. So hope you enjoy this interview with Beth. Welcome, Beth. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love for you to give us your background, things that maybe people can't pick up on from reading your bios on websites.
Well, I'm so happy to join you guys and really looking forward to talking to you about Formula E at Portland. Kind of also then curious to get your feedback after you go to the event too. So we'll have to have like a follow-up and so I can get a sense of your impressions. I work professionally in motorsport and have now for really, I mean, goodness, automotive and motorsport for 20 years, but really with the motorsport concentration, maybe in the last 12. I look at like the path that got me here. It's kind of typical of the way that my whole life has gone, where I've kind of had these career pivots and like life pivots, which have been, I know no different. So I don't really see that as strange, but I've been reflective lately, especially as I'm taking on this new responsibility with Formula E. And I think of like, wow, if I had just stayed in the thing that I was doing 20 years ago and stayed in that, like, where would I be now? And there's good and bad of that in that, you know, a very predictable life. And then now, because I couldn't have, if you asked me 20 years ago what my 5-year plan was, I never had one. And I think it's really worked well for me because my life has taken me places that I wouldn't have imagined or dreamed because I never would have seen it for myself. So case in point, like, you know, owning an INDYCAR team and being, you know, literally owning a team in the Indy 500 and participating in that, running a factory racing program, like really running the nuts and bolts of the marketing and operations of a racing program, a factory program at that, like building it from a clean sheet of paper and racing at Le Mans and winning a championship with that, winning a NASCAR championship, being involved with, you know, on the manufacturer side, like I have a NASCAR championship ring. Like that's ridiculous. When I, you know, if I were to tell myself that, because my undergraduate degree is in broadcasting and film, I wanted to make documentaries because it was, you know, the typical thing that happens when you're in high school and everybody kind of wants you to kind of pick a pathway. All you really do is you figure out, well, what do I like? And what, you know, or oftentimes it's, you know, the things that you see, and I say that a lot now that, you know, people might want to be a teacher because they see teachers or they know, or it's what their mom does or what their dad does, or the kind of the big categories of, well, even if you don't know a doctor, you've seen doctors and you know what you might think you know what doctors do. So like, oh, I want to go to med school. And then you get into med school and you're like, oh, I hate this or whatever. So same kind of idea. You kind of pick something that you have as an interest. I studied that, get the degree, and never worked in it. And then kind of just, I don't want to say drifted along because I certainly wasn't a deadbeat, but
You were just
I
seeing
think,
where opportunity took you.
yeah. But the reason why I think I'm so passionate now about these programs for young women, and whether you're, 12 to 18, or if you're in university or just coming out of university and trying to kind of figure out where the path is and where the ladder is. I think I'm passionate that way because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not that you everybody has to follow the ladder, but there was, that then the ladder is now an option that
Mm-hmm.
never occurred
Yeah.
before. So I've worked in automotive corporately. I worked for Volkswagen Group in finance, Aston Martin in operations, and then Fiat Chrysler in marketing and operations, running the SRT brand, which is the performance division, which was a standalone brand for a handful of years. So like the race, the performance variants of all the cars. And then because it was all the performance vehicles, that's where racing sits. Usually there's a lot of bleed over. So that's why
Mhm.
the professional management of racing kind of came with that. And that's where I really kind of dug into that. Did that for a few years, left, decided I wanted to do more to get more people into racing and to kind of grow the racing audience. Had this idea to maybe have a women's program in the Indy 500, set out to do that. Did that. We'll be back out there again, and then just recently also joined Formula E to be the vice president of sporting, which is a very British term,
Such a fun title.
right?
I'm also obsessed with the idea that you never had a specific 5-year plan.
Oh
I
God, no.
think that is just, Nicole and I talk about this all the time. People are always like, what are your goals with TG1F? Where do you want it to be in a couple of years? And we're like, I don't know, because when we started this 4 years ago, we could never have imagined that this is what we'd be doing now.
Right,
Like it's tough to, set, it's good to have, goals and dreams, but
right.
it's so hard to like say, okay, this is where I want to be. I'm going to take the steps to get exactly there, because you just kind of close yourself off to other doors that might open along the path. So I think it's really great to hear that that's been successful for you, because I think it's such a good mindset to have, like, have ideas of what you like and follow that, but without having like,
Rigid.
if I'm not here in 5 years, then I'll be upset.
Yeah.
And it's the critical thing is exactly what you said. The key word is the mindset, because if you have a plan and you kind of restrict yourself, if there's a hiccup and you don't get to that plan, you can start to have negative thoughts. It's how you absorb those hiccups. If you weren't
Yes.
so restricted, then it could be more like a pinball and you just kind of bounce into the next thing.
Yes.
That probably might have been the smarter thing, but you don't know because you don't have the visibility. You're not sitting at 50,000 feet looking down at the corn
Right.
maze where you are, so
Right.
100%.
yeah.
I love that.
Like you just said, you recently joined Formula E as VP of
Right.
Sport. How did you get into this role, and what was the thing that excited you most about this opportunity?
So it was a bit serendipitous, actually. So what's interesting about my racing endeavors and then everything else that I've done in both corporately and then with Women in Motorsports North America is I'm kind of visible in that, I'll be at events and things like that, speaking on behalf of women in racing. And so the CEO of Formula E, Jeff Dodds, who's a really engaging guy, he joined Formula E a year ago, and he's very dynamic, and he absolutely would like to see more women in Formula E in more roles. And he's of the mind, I believe rightfully, that you have to put the concerted effort in. Like things don't happen by accident. And I'm also fond of saying this is just about like quotas and whatever. No, it's just making sure that you're engaging with women early on to let them know that this exists and that these jobs exist, and then creating training programs. And to be fair, when we say creating training programs for men, the reality is there aren't even the training programs for men or women. So it's kind of just giving you that kick in the pants to like, all right, like if we want to get more people into this and have that sustainability for, the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's something that we need to think about and be mindful of and make sure that all of our partners and teams and stakeholders are aware of it. Because if everybody pulls their weight a little bit, then we can achieve whatever the strategy is. So he reached out to me to see if I would consider bringing my team from INDYCAR into Formula E. So we had a Zoom intro in December, and I said, I would absolutely consider that. I'd like to, my goal is to have my race team being full time, and because of all the things that we can do, and obviously the premise of my team is transferable. So the idea of being an IndyCar and somewhere else is exactly what I've always wanted to do. So yeah, let's talk. So he invited me to come to see a race. And then about a month later, he reached out to me with an email and he said, hey, I have an off the wall question. We're creating a new position here that I think you'd be a really good fit for. And let me mention that first call, we probably talked for like 30 minutes. It was kind of more like an intro meet and greet. What's your background? And then what's the origin story of your race team? And why did you do this? And what was great is when we had that initial talk, you could just tell that he got it. He understood the why of what I was doing, where I was trying to go with it, and just really kind of appreciated it for the face value of what it is and kind of the deeper level of what it is. So then end of February, he sent me this email to say, would you consider talking about a position that we're creating? And I said, yeah, sure. Okay. Because you always say yes to the conversation.
Always say yes.
Yeah.
Say yes to the conversation because you never know. So I did take the job. I'm excited about joining the series. They also have been completely supportive of me also having my race team. So whether that's IndyCar, sports car, wherever it is, the fact that they are fine with me doing both was the only way that I would say yes.
Yeah.
And then be also able to do the other things I do, like Women in Motorsports North America. I'm on the Women in Motorsport commission for the FIA, all of those extra things, because I don't like to sleep.
Clearly.
But why Formula E is interesting to me is it is a world championship. It is global. So that idea of being able to kind of see the world with this exciting racing platform. And I had been to 4 Formula E races, 5 prior to joining the company. And so the first year when, Formula E Gen 1, where the driver switches cars halfway through, I definitely saw that. And so to see the evolution is interesting. But the series is exciting. It's growing. It's only 10 years old, which is an interesting place right now where it is, because it's kind of gone from startup and scrappy young to now putting its big boy pants on and being a proper series. And to be fair, the racing is really good.
So something that you were saying, I think, touched on a lot of the questions that we had for you, but one in particular I think really stems from that conversation we're having about the 5-year plan. We have a lot of young women in our community that are super interested in working in motorsports. What advice would you have for people that, are either in college or university or out of it and are really looking to break into motorsports? What would be kind of the little things that they can do to set themselves up?
It's an unwieldy industry. It's huge, right? Because if you think of all of the different types of racing, I mean, obviously, I know that you guys can concentrate on F1, but everyone knows if you start to kind of peel back, look a little further afield, you've got F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, sports car, and then within sports car, how many different series? And then, then you look at the support series, drag racing, land speed records, off-road racing. It just gets bigger, depending on how far you go out. And in fairness, a lot of the skill sets across all of those disciplines are the same or very similar. So, I talk to people that because they've seen, certain shows on Netflix, like, I want to be a race engineer and I want to be an F1. It's like, okay, that's cool. And that's a great thing to aspire to, but kind of like we talked earlier about being open to opportunity wherever it takes and not being so singularly focused. The reality is there's a finite amount of these jobs, of that specific job. But if you just say you want to be a race engineer, there's a lot of jobs and a lot of ways that you can do it. And you could literally be a race engineer on a NASCAR team and eventually be a race engineer on an F1 team. What? Yes, you could, because the skill set is more similar than you think it is. Let alone you could be a race engineer and then go work for an automotive company too. So and I say that very much on purpose in that, because if you want to make a lot of money, you'd rather work for a car company. What's interesting is, yes, motorsport is growing and it's bigger than I've ever seen it. And what's fantastic about that is most racing diehard fans we're all the same. And you guys kind of experienced a bit of this too, where you became fans and then you wanted your friends to watch it. Right. So I've spent my whole life like getting friends to watch F1 or get to watch IndyCar. It's that thing where you sit down with your friend who's never seen it before and you do the same thing, like pick a driver, right? Pick a car.
Exactly.
It's just like watching the Kentucky Derby. Everybody picks a horse because it just makes it a little bit more engaging. But for the something like, IndyCar, Formula One, Formula E, you pick your team and you watch it over the arc of the season, and
Yeah.
have your driver that you can't stand, and you bench race and you yell about all that stuff, and that's the joy of it, and that's why we all do it. What's wonderful is it's growing by leaps and bounds right now, but it's also created a labor shortage, because over the years, you'd have one series kind of grow and another one would kind of fall off. And there would be this, it was almost like having this portfolio of racing. And it was fine because one would be stronger, one would be weaker, and it was all right. Right now, it's like they're all growing at the same time, which is wonderful, but it's created a strain on people. We have a people shortage. So there's no better time than now to get into that now. But what does that look like? I would absolutely tell people that no matter what, you start at the bottom, and starting at the bottom could literally even mean working with amateur teams. There's amateur racing every single weekend, and it's a great way to do something on the side. Like, you're not just going to quit your job or, and then just go run off and join a race team, because realistically, working professionally in racing is like running away and joining the circus. But to kind of get your feet wet, if you find probably everywhere that you are in the US, including Alaska, because I know a woman that runs a racetrack in Alaska, you could find ways to get a job part-time with a race team near you, whether again, or even, like I say, working at a track, working for a small team, any kind of capacity. So respectfully, if you're a PR person and you love racing, then work in somewhat related to racing PR, right? Or if you're a doctor, and you love racing, go be the chief medical person for INDYCAR, or the chief medical person for F1. Like, all of those things exist. Or training the medical personnel for a series for a racetrack. So the funny thing is, you can actually have your main discipline and still kind of have your way that it touches motorsport. And I think we need to tell that story more, because it's also something that you kind of like dip your toe into for a little bit and then get out of and kind of revisit it. Like, because, especially for women, like, I'll say the quiet part out loud. It's hard to do this if you have a family. Mm-hmm. So you might want to do it when you're young, like right out of university. I'm speaking my British English right now. When you're right out of college, go a couple of years, work, but then you might want to, and I say women, but let's be clear, women and men. I'm saying, like, if you're literally going to just give birth and then you're going to want to be close to home for the next, 6 months to a year. If you had a job on a NASCAR team, you could not do that. So there's that thing where you kind of step away and then you can step back in. But the way that you step away is maybe during that time you work for a racetrack.
Yeah.
So you think about all of those things. Yeah. So the way to learn about that and what that ecosystem looks like, Women in Motorsports North America, which is this organization I started with Lynn St. James a few years ago. It's meant to be a professional organization, like a network for women working in racing. Now, we focus on professional racing, but respectfully, the information is very much the same on the amateur side too. WomenInMotorsportsNA.com is the website. There's a lot of information, Racing 101, learning how it all works. I think that's the first thing to look at. And then we have events regionally. We're going to have an event at Portland for Formula E. Women in Motorsports North America has a summit, which is geared more for professional. But to be fair, you can absolutely do like a sabbatical day and join us. It's in December, and it's panel discussions, thought leaders in the industry. But it's a way for you to be in a room with 500 other women, and that's that way to build that network. And respectfully, you could also try it for a year and figure out that it's not for you.
Yeah.
And that's, that's a learning as well.
That's okay too.
That's okay too. And you can still be a fan working in it. Because here's the thing, you can love something, and when you work in it, it can make you not love it.
Yes.
We've had those days.
It's funny because when I have friends that, or even people that I hired for my race team that were longtime racing fans, and then they'd start asking some of the more insider questions. I'm like, okay, you could stay in your bubble right now, your fan bubble, and it's a lovely place to be. But if I start telling you how the sausage is made, like, you can't go back,
Right.
right? That tube just leaves the tube. And then when I'm saying like the behind the scenes stuff, I'm saying like, do you really want to know the grind? Do you really want to know why this guy doesn't like that guy and why that deal's not going together? Because this would happen 3 years ago. Like it's that stuff, which every industry has, right?
I would be curious. A lot of people that say that they really want to work in motorsports, if then getting into it, they're like, oh, maybe I liked just being able to like turn on the TV on Sundays and watch a race, or turn on the TV and watch a race and not have to like, be on.
And it's that fine line of, because I actually, because I literally in high school, college, I worked in the alpine skiing business, right? So I skied for a living, right? Okay. And I kind of fell into that, like, because I worked at an outdoor sports store. Okay. And I did that. So literally I was paid to go skiing, and okay, that's great. My day off, the last thing I wanted to do was go skiing. But then to that point though, I think that's probably one of the next things that we'll work on with, and I'm saying this out loud without conferring with the board as a strategy.
You guys heard it here first.
I think that's a good thing for Women in Motorsports North America, WIMNA, that we also let people know. When I'm mentioning that amateur thing, the reason I also say that is, so just so everybody knows too, race teams, a lot of the employees that you see on race weekends are part-time. The way that we ramp up, like if you look at INDYCAR, the way that you ramp up to just do the Indy 500, where you have 33 entries. Now, 33 are who race on race day, but you could have 35, 36, attempting to qualify. Years ago, you'd have, way more than that. But the way, the regular grid used to be like 22 cars, and you kind of ramp up to 33 on the 500 weekend. You're adding 11 more cars, and those 11 cars are manned by that many more people. And so you didn't need to employ them through the whole season. So they were usually people that had kind of semi-retired, which means that they just wanted to come off the road. Like they're still going to work like back at the shop, but they didn't want to travel. So they're usually a little older. What's great is they're a little older in that they've got the institutional knowledge. So it's kind of like you call them back up from the bench, or they literally are retired and they're not even working, but they only work the month of May. I mean, my team in 21, it was all part-time, and the IndyCar team was everybody's side hustle. So I had a dog groomer and a bartender and a landscaper and this and that. But the reality is that actually exists on all the major teams too. You have a guy that, like the tire guy, might do commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had the guy that did our tires in Le Mans for the Viper factory program was an executive at Hewlett Packard, but he was just such a racing fan. He knew the guy, he knew the team manager, and for years he did it. And he would do a lot of our American Le Mans series at the time, which is now IMSA. He would do the whole season, or if he couldn't commit to all 15 races, he could say, okay, I could do these 10. And then we would get somebody else to do the 5. It's almost like the job share back before that was the thing. And that's literally how it happens. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And why does that matter? Because you could still have your day job and have this, and you have the love it. You're absolutely an insider. I mean, if you're there for the 24 hours of Daytona or the 24 hours of Le Mans, you're there at 2 a.m. and you've got grease under your fingernails and you're wearing the whole costume. It's the real deal. And when the team wins, you're winning and you're up on the podium, and all of those things are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you might make a lot more money because it's your side hustle. And during the day, you're working as an attorney in, Chicago. And this is just something that you figured out as your side hustle. So I say that to say the motorsport industry needs you.
Yeah.
So, these aren't either or possibilities. So you can absolutely be part-time in racing, and we would love to have you.
I love that.
Right.
I think that's such good advice, and advice that we don't hear a lot of. A lot of people are like, oh, you don't have a plan B, just have a plan A and go do it, and just like quit your job and try it. But like, that's not realistic for everyone. And like, I think sometimes side hustles and passion projects can bring so much more to your life because you're working in something you love, but you're not relying on it.
Right.
You're doing it because you love it. You're not doing it because you need to do it. Right. And I think that is like the most important thing, because then you get to keep loving it, and it gets to just be this fun, amazing thing that you are able to do, rather than like, I have to go do this. It's like, I get to go.
Yeah.
And it's a privilege. And let's remember too that, when people say don't have a plan B, like not everybody's wired the same. And entrepreneurial people, entrepreneurs, and that's fine. And it works for that person. Engineers don't have that brain. Engineers don't have that risk tolerance. They are always calculating. That's what their brain is. And that's what
That's why Ferrari can sometimes go down to plan F.
Correct.
in
Yeah,
a
they have
weekend.
it all mapped out. And so that's why you have to meet people where they are. And that's why,
Yeah.
and to be fair, you need that entrepreneurial person. That's the person that starts the race team. And then you have that engineer brain mapping out the calendar of building up a new car. You have that Gantt chart to say, okay, we need to have this part arrive on this day and this and this and this. That's somebody that's doing like, operations engineering and all of that, because you can't be loosey goosey about that, right? Because then you'd never get the car on the grid. So it takes all of those personality types, but it's important to realize that those personality types go through life differently, but they all have value. The thing that's so beautiful about a team, and we'll use the race team as the example, is you get, granted, everyone on the race team has that sort of type A and wants to kind of, work hard and achieve and be part of something, but they're not all exactly the same personality. They vary by different degrees. And the combination of their values is what makes the magic.
That's what makes the magic.
As newer fans of Formula E, Nicole and I are excited that TGNF will be, present at the Portland E Prix at the end of this month, and bringing our followers along with us throughout that journey, throughout that weekend. What should we and our audience tune into or kind of keep an eye out as we get more into Formula E? Like, what are kind of the top things that people should be looking out for if they're going to a race or if they're watching on TV to really make sure that they get the most out of it?
Well, for the science geeks, the science nerds in the audience, there's a lot more going on than just a straight motor race. So it's not that just the green flag and boom, have at it. These drivers have to manage the energy in the car. And they're really they're trying to regenerate energy through the course of the race. They need to regenerate 45% of the energy they're going to need to finish the race. One thing that we introduced this year that I think is such a cool visual, and it's an interesting thing that might carry over from race to road, or I should say, it's not that we developed it. You're going to start to see it in the road. So it's interesting to see the visual parallel. But these race cars, we're trying to find things for fan excitement. So we used to have a thing called Fan Boost. This year, instead of that, we introduced a thing called the Attack Zone. And so basically, the racing drivers can go offline. There's one spot on the track that is highlighted, and it's very obvious. It's literally painted on the track itself, but the visual for the television, there's an added graphic for television that you can see, which is fantastic, which actually shows like the motion, kind of like, when you're watching like the NFL and you can see like the lines move, like it's that kind of, but it's really, it enhances your viewer experience, because you're like, okay, I see what's going on. But what's really amazing is the car can go offline and get a bit more boost for that lap. It's like driving over, you're getting charge while you're driving versus having to pull over to stop to get more boost and then keep going. You're getting charge as the car is, rolling along.
Oh, okay.
And you may know this, but they're looking for like the actual consumer electric grid. They're looking at in-road charging.
Yeah.
As a thing that can, happen in time. So what I love about the visual of this is it's a very quick, obvious example of what that looks like and what that means. So watch for that. One thing that is amazing is it really comes down to driver skill and kind of team strategy, because they do have a shared chassis. The manufacturers do have certain things that they can design, but there are a lot of shared parts. And there's two reasons for why there's such a shared platform. One is for the sustainability, because we're actually helping these teams manage that, in that making sure that the supply chain is matching sort of the ethos of the series. Because when you start having too many things open and too many people making decisions, and let's be clear, in racing, people are always going to usually lean towards the decision that is going to make the car go faster. And you could start, going down a rabbit hole of spending and maybe not making the best green choice if we were leaving them, a choice on the most sustainable choice. They're like, well, this is going to make you go faster and you probably win more races. Like the racer in us is like, oh, how do I do that? So we have shared parts for a reason, because we kind of take the guesswork out, don't leave it to the teams in that sense. But the other reason is the cost cap, because we wanted this also to there be somewhat of an affordability for these teams to jump into this, because we thought that, the origin of the series, it was so important that you wanted the teams to embrace it. A lot of these teams also race in Formula One or in sports car racing. And so when you're looking at incremental spend for these car companies, it has to make sense because
Right.
there has to be a business case. So I know that that's the sort of stuff that, you know, a fan wouldn't really think about, but those are the things that we worry about and take care of so that we can have a good racing product and you can just enjoy it and have a great weekend out and, you know, have your fun in the fan zone and then have a good on track product. But there is a lot of that thought that goes in behind the scenes. So you have 11 teams with 2 cars each. We have 7 manufacturers, which is really great. So you do see the competition between, you know, Jaguar, Porsche, Nissan, Mahindra, and then some of those manufacturers supply more than one team. So, you know, that's again because there's like a customer team and a factory team. But I think what you're going to see that's really different is this is a lot about the drivers figuring out how to manage that energy. And quite literally, if they don't do it right, by the end of the race, they're just, you know, it's kind of like when you're watching somebody conserve fuel. But if they get the recipe wrong, then, you know, or the formula wrong, that, you know, by those last few laps, you're like, oh God,
Hey, we
are they even going to?
got firsthand in a hybrid Alfa Romeo in the desert of California trying to hobble to a gas station.
Right. And all of a sudden you're like, I need to learn how to be a hypermiler.
We're like,
Yeah.
cool, we're running. Thank God we had a little bit of energy left in the battery because we were like running on it was lines on the gas tank. Just
Right.
lines.
You have to like turn off
And we were still
every
like a
system
half
in the
mile
car.
away. There was traffic. It was the only gas station. It was going between Vegas and LA. We were driving back to LA after the Vegas Grand Prix. So it was everyone on the road was looking for this one gas station.
Close to the highway. It was it was chaotic. But
We were like, we're about to have to get out and push this car.
Exactly.
We are going to be
You
pushing
need
it.
to like turn off the radio, turn off everything that's draining the
roll down the
system.
windows. It's gonna get hot.
Right.
We can't have the AC on.
Nope.
No one touch
Nope.
anything.
If you're going downhill, just like let it roll. Yep. As miserable as that sounds, that's what these drivers are doing.
Exactly. So
And I get it.
played on a personal level.
I give them a lot of credit because
Right.
that was a really, really stressful situation for us as we were not competing with anyone, but I was
Think
stressed.
about that. Like if like as much as that, I mean, obviously that's like such as like a simplified analogy, but if you think of it and get your head around that, like there's a genius to it too, right? Because if you're really good at it, because you're doing that and you're racing, right? So that's why we've had drivers come from other series that are great racing drivers that have come even from F1 and have come in and like they just can't get the hang of it and they're like there's
Yeah.
so much going on. And so we were actually talking about that as we try to go to this next generation of getting more women in or getting, you know, different drivers to come in. It's a different skill set. And, you know, the analogy that I give, it's like flying a plane or flying a helicopter. Like it's a different, you know, you kind of have to learn that different procedures in that. And so there's e-karting now, right? And so the idea of like, all right, let's make sure that we kind of have that ladder so that the kids are starting in electric carts and learning about energy management.
Yeah.
Well,
That is so cool.
sounds like you have very exciting plans for Formula
It's
E.
good.
I'm really excited to see what you guys do with the sport, and I'm really excited to go to my first race as well. So thank you so much for chatting with us today. I learned so much, and I think you honestly are an inspiration not only to myself and Kate now, but hopefully to all of our listeners. Thank you so much for taking some time today.
Thank you. And I like that we had more of an existential conversation because we can always talk about stats and numbers, but I think people, you know, they need to know that there's people they can talk to and kind of figure out their own path.
Absolutely.
But by all means, check out WIMNA Motorsports NA, and there's some good information there. And if racing's your side hustle, that's good. And we need you. And please go be a trauma surgeon by day and be a tire support person for the Indy 500.
Try different.
Moral of the story.
Right. Right. Go be a trial attorney in Chicago and then, you know, maybe be like left inside tire.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a fueler. I mean, the list goes on.
The opportunities are endless.
They are. We desperately need you. But we don't need you full time. I mean, that's the truth of it. Because we don't need a fueler on a Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
You're reviewing legal documents on a Tuesday, fueling car on a Saturday. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this has been fantastic. Again, thank you so much. We'll share all of the links to everything Beth has mentioned today. You can find them in the show notes and on our Instagram. But once again, thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you, guys.
Well, that was fun. Because we had an interview today, took a little bit of extra time for It's Electric. We're going to get into the girls' room. And Nicole, I'm going to let you take this one because I feel like this was hard for you.
Okay. So we're gonna chat a little bit about Heidi. If you don't know Heidi, she's
Trigger warning.
She's Daniel Ricciardo's girlfriend, and she is in a new show on Hulu, a Hulu original. It's called House of the Owl. Came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. It's about like this Japanese businessman who's kind of like the fixer, and then he goes missing, and I think his son really has to kind of like figure out what's going on. Heidi is, from the 2 episodes that I watched earlier today, she is seemingly the love interest of the son. And so the thing is, though, is that the show is all in Japanese except for the parts that she's in. And so I was like not really paying attention to the show because I had it on the background while I was doing other things. You know what? I'll give her this. Her American accent, pretty good. I don't think that you would know that she was an American if you didn't know that she was Portuguese.
And that's on acting.
Yeah.
That's on being an actress, to be honest.
Is a thespian. She went to Toto's summer camp. And she studied up. I'll tell you this. I'm probably not going to continue the show. I watched a couple episodes just to get the gist of it so that I could talk about it on the podcast. I'm just like not hooked on the show. It's not necessarily my brand of TV.
Got it.
It feels very much kind of like a boy show, and I'm just not into
what?
A boy show.
It feels like something that I would like.
Give it a shot.
I love shows about like fixers and drama.
You watch it and you let me know.
I will. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of buzz about it, but I do love the title. I'm like, okay, Throne of Glass prequel. What? House of the Owl? If you know, you know. Wink, wink.
Again, we don't have too much on her because she's very private, but she is, if you're interested in seeing her in action, check out the House of Owl on Hulu. And if anyone's watched it all the way through, like, let me know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, you're also like, I'm not hooked. Also noting that you did not pay attention to half of it. Maybe it's because you don't know what's going on.
Well, that's the problem, is that like it wasn't keeping me hooked. Like I was kind of it's fine. We'll see. If I'm incredibly wrong and everyone has really strong opinions on it and you're like, you have to watch this, it's going to be the next big thing, let me know. Maybe I'll get back into it, but would love to hear everyone's thoughts on the matter.
All right, and that's the girls' room. The girls' room. The girls' room. A little quick one for today. Let's wrap it up with the Manifest Minute. I don't really have anything to bitch about this week, so I think we can skip bitching hour. Are you mad about anything?
No, I'm actually in a good mood today, so.
Great. Same. We can skip it. Let's manifest. Let's use that positive brain energy.
Let's do it.
So if anyone knows deep T2NF lore, no problem if you don't. But our friend Daniela is a Hollywood super agent. Think Ari Gold from Entourage, but like nice and hot and a girl.
Exactly.
She's just a powerhouse. She's the best. And Daniela recently was assigned the job of getting her clients into Daniel Ricciardo's show. Mm-hmm. So she got that. That's been her responsibility at work. And she finally got like the call from the people at the show to be like, we want to see some of your clients, whatever. So what we're going to be doing today is manifesting that Daniela gets her clients into Danny's show. So 1, that's a great thing for her career-wise. Number 2, that means we have access to people in Danny's show.
Surprise, we're actually the clients who we're manifesting for.
I know, I was going to say, and then we can actually just, because Danielle will be like in their ears, be like, actually, I have some other really good people that like you could pop into the show if you wanted to. Their names are Kate and Nicole. So basically, we're manifesting for ourselves to be in Danny's show. So
kind of a selfish manifest as well.
So if everyone could please shut your eyes and take a big, deep breath in through your nose and a deep breath out through your mouth. Now I want you to imagine it's Daniel Ricciardo's show. It's the premiere. Nicole and I are there. We're interviewing people on the red carpet premiere of the show. It's wonderful. You're watching the show. You're laughing. You're crying. It's amazing. One of the best things that any F1 driver has done. The show gets to the end. You're like, wow, that was so great. And the actors were so amazing. I have to watch the credits. I have to see who's responsible for this. You keep going. You keep going. And all of a sudden, you see the names of the main actors in the show, and you go to their IMDb profiles because you're like, I have to know more about them. I have to know what else they've been in. I have to be their biggest fans. And you see that they are represented by Daniela. I'm not going to say her last name, privacy reasons. You see that they are represented by Daniela, and it's just so cool, so fun. All of a sudden, everyone is calling Daniela. You're like, wow, that is the greatest agent in the entire game. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And that's a manifest. So we're all just seeing Daniela's name everywhere. She's on the cover of Time magazine, most influential woman in Hollywood, behind the scenes.
People are desperate to get on her call sheet.
Yeah, the agent to the stars for real. And so I need everyone to really lock this one in because it's very important. So deep breath in through your nose. Deep breath out through your mouth. Open your eyes. And I want this week, this is what I want.
Tell me.
I want you guys to find your favorite actors. I want you to figure out who their agents are. I don't want you to say, like, that was a good person. That person is doing a good job. I really appreciate them. And I also, to bring it more to a personal level, I want you guys to think about something that's not a stretch, but something that you think would be really, really cool for you in your personal life, in your professional life, in a side hustle, whatever you want. And I want you to be like, wow, that would be something, like that's something that's kind of like going on around me that I would love to be involved in. And I want you to take, and it could be something that you're like, I could never be involved in that. Like that's something that's like so kind of out of the ordinary for me. I don't know if I could do it. And I want you to take one step towards that goal. I want you to do one thing that's going to put you in the position to achieve that goal or become involved in something that you really want to. It could be something if you're in school and there's like a club at school that you think is really cool and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to be involved in that. Reach out to someone, go to a meeting, do something that's just going to like do one thing that is going to get you a little closer to your goal. If it's professionally and there's a job opening that you are unsure if you could maybe get, or it's just something that would be amazing. Even if you don't apply right away, redo your resume, brush it up, add your most recent experience. I just want everyone to do something that's going to get them a little bit closer to a goal. Likewise, how we are supporting Daniela in getting a little bit closer to her goal of getting her clients on this show made by a driver of her favorite sport. So I think it's very important to believe in ourselves and to always know that even if something feels a little daunting, even if it's something that just feels too good to be true, we can do it. It's just one step at a time. And believe in yourself.
Yeah. I love it.
That's the action for this week. That's our manifest. If you wanted to manifest also, seeing Nicole and I's faces on the show, feel free to manifest on your own. We're not going to make you do it, but like if you wanted to, that'd be fine. And that's all we have for you this week, guys. That's it. That's the show. That's what we got.
We had a fun time this week, I think.
We had fun. It was, it was what it was. It was what it was.
It was what it was.
It is what it is, and it was what it was, famously said by Tate McRae.
Next week, I'll be coming at you live from Portland, Oregon for the F1 E-Prix. So it will probably be a wonky podcasting schedule, so just stay tuned for that. But until next time we're in your ears,
we'll see you on the internet.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of TG1F, an F1 podcast with Kate and Nicole.
If you like what you heard, don't miss out on the fun between episodes.
Keep up with the chaos on Instagram at 2 Girls 1 Formula. That's spelled out TWO Girls numerical 1 Formula.
And check out our website, 2girls1formula.com, to shop cute fan-made F1 merch.
See you next week.
But like we said, in the meantime, we'll see you on the internet.